she's so fine. Hell of a hell of a blows my mind. Hell of a lights my day.
What's good, guys? This story is coming out of Memphis, Tennessee, and it's a sad one. Department of Children's Services investigated mother before fatal stabbing. Police documents reveal why a mother says she stabbed her 10-year-old daughter to death. The Tennessee Department of Children's Services said it investigated Lawrencia Reed in the past involving her daughter. Quote, "There was no reason to do anything to a child. No reason. I don't really see no reason she should have done that," end quote, said a man who did not want to reveal his identity. That man can't forget the awful sight of 10-year-old Kamari Reed lying on the ground in front of her family's Raleigh apartment Friday night. Quote, "I saw her lying on the ground," end quote, he said. He says people were putting pressure on her multiple stab wounds to try and stop the bleeding, while others called for help. Quote, "That's the first time I noticed 911 being busy. Everyone was calling and dialing 911, end quote, he told WMC Action News 5. The 10-year-old did not survive her injuries.
Tonight about what police saw when they got to the apartment where a 10-year-old was stabbed to death, an unspeakable crime allegedly at the hands of her own mother. WMC Action News 5's Janice Broad shows you the new information she obtained tonight from investigators.
I've learned the Tennessee Department of Children's Services has investigated Lawrencia Reed in the past involving her 10-year-old daughter. The same 10-year-old daughter she is accused of stabbing to death.
There's no reason to do anything to a child if you have no reason. I don't see no reason she should have done that.
This man, who did not want to reveal his identity, can't forget the awful sight of 10-year-old Kamari Reed bleeding in front of her Raleigh apartment.
I saw the baby on the ground.
He says people were putting pressure on her multiple stab wounds, trying to stop the bleeding and calling for help.
That was the first time I noticed the 911 to be busy because everyone was literally calling and dialing 911.
Kamari Reed did not survive her injuries. A police report reveals the horrors of what happened inside this apartment Friday night. Investigators say neighbors saw an 18-year-old identified police as Lawrencia Reed's sister running from the apartment, bleeding, along with Reed's 12-year-old son. Alarmed, neighbors followed a blood trail to the apartment and kicked the door in. That's when they found Reed's 3-year-old son soaking wet next to a bathtub full of water with his mother. Someone brought the 3-year-old outside.
The guy was actually running out the door and had the baby in his hands.
Reed's sister told police that Reed stabbed them and tried to drown her 12-year-old son. Another resident told me he saw Reed standing on her balcony nude, saying she appeared to be looking for someone just after the 10-year-old ran out of the apartment. Police took Reed to the Homicide Bureau, where she waived her Miranda rights and said, referring to her children, quote, "I told them to get into a kneeling position. My sons did, but my daughter and sister didn't, and they had to go. So I did what I had to do." Lawrencia Reed is charged with first-degree murder and 3 counts of criminal attempt first-degree murder. The Department of Children's Services would not reveal the circumstances of their past involvement with Lawrencia Reed or if there was any past involvement with her other children.
A police report reveals the horrors of what happened inside the apartment on Friday night. Investigators say neighbors saw an 18-year-old described by police as Lawrencia Reed's sister, running from the apartment bleeding, with Reed's 12-year-old son. Neighbors followed a blood trail to the apartment and kicked the door in, finding Reed's 3-year-old son soaking wet next to a bathtub full of water with his mother. A resident remembers seeing a man with the 3-year-old. Quote, "A guy was running out the door and had the baby in his hands," end quote. Reed's 18-year-old sister told police Reed stabbed them and tried to drown her 12-year-old son. Another resident who did not want to talk on camera said he saw Reed standing nude on her balcony, appearing to be looking for someone just after the 10-year-old ran out of the apartment. Other residents told police the children said their mother stabbed them. Police took Reed to the Homicide Bureau, where she waived her Miranda rights and told investigators, quote, "I told them to get into a kneeling position. My sons did, but my daughter and sister didn't, and they had to go. So I did what I had to do, end quote. Lawrencia Reed is charged with first-degree murder and three counts of criminal attempt first-degree murder. Traumatized residents said they can't believe it had happened. The Department of Children's Services will not reveal the circumstances of their past involvement with Lawrencia Reed and would not say if her other children were part of the past investigation they had with her. Kamari's aunt, Akeria, tells WREG-TV they are hurt, angry, confused, and mostly saddened after losing 10-year-old Kamari Reed. Akeria said the family still doesn't know why her sister allegedly took her daughter's life, but she says right now they're just focusing on staying strong as a family. Quote, that girl was special. That smile right there, that girl was special, end quote, Kamari's father said. Filled with emotion and heartache, this father grieves the loss of his 10-year-old daughter during her candlelight vigil. Quote, I know she's in a better place. I know she's looking down on me, end quote, Kamari's father said. Memphis Police say the child, who family identifies as Kamari Reed, was allegedly stabbed by her 29-year-old mother Friday night at the Huntington Hills Apartments in Raleigh. Neighbors say they saw Kamari run out of the apartment unit scared for her life before collapsing outside. Quote, I've never seen her in a bad place. I love that girl with everything in me. That was my shadow. If you see Kamari, you see me, end quote, Akeria Franklin, Kamari's aunt said. Franklin described the 10-year-old as a funny, kind, and bubbly child that got along with everyone. Franklin said her niece sleeps behind two brothers. She said despite initial reports by Memphis Police, only 2 people were injured that night, her niece Kamari and her other sister Akeria Reed, who's now recovering in the hospital. Quote, first, she was not stable. She had to be resuscitated. She had been stabbed 13 times, end quote, Franklin said. Franklin said her sister was set to graduate from Kingsbury High in the next couple of weeks. However, she said the opportunity for her sister to walk across the stage has now been stripped away. Quote, she's confused as to why her best friend did this to her. My sister is her best friend, end quote, Franklin said. Franklin said the entire family is just shocked by what happened. She said at the moment they do not know what led to the events on Friday night. She said from her understanding, Lawrencia was admitted to a mental health institution for evaluation, and they have not made contact. Quote, an innocent child is gone, and nobody knows the reason why. Nobody knows anything. We're just all feeding off the emotion that an innocent person died, end quote, Franklin said. A GoFundMe has been set up for the family to help with funeral arrangements and hospital bills, and I will link that in the description box. This is just a terrible, terrible tragedy. I can't imagine seeing that whole thing play out. I can't imagine being in that apartment. Obviously, Lawrencia Reed had some sort of mental break. But I do blame DCF because they should have stepped in, depending on what their investigation was in the past with her. But if she had been admitted to a mental institution, those children should have become a priority for someone along the way, in the system, at least. My prayers go out to her family. This is just a terrible tragedy. I'm going to end the video on that note. Thanks for watching, guys.